Chapter 9, 48 Hours. Module 4800, the relatively new to U.S. attempt by the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department, Operation Safe Street OSS, to curb the gang activity in LA County Jail wasn't working. Their attempt to isolate us in a module alone and out of the general population was an impossible task. The reasons they gave for such preferential treatment were initially cloaked in emotional rhetoric and sprang from the April 1984 rebellion in which 17 Crips erupted into rampaging headbangers in the 4,000 floor chow hall. Heron, an OG from Spooktown Compton Crips, had been beaten by the pigs for some infraction, and the other bangers just weren't going for it. Fed up with the wanton abuse from the pigs, the Crips seized the chow hall. After the pigs were beaten and one temporarily detained for questioning, the rebels went after the trustees, the faithful servants of the pigs, who were notorious for shorting everyone on food. The trustees had also jacked up the price of donuts, which they stole from the main kitchen and sold to general population from the established price of $2 a bag. All were beaten and ran from the chow hall. Then the doors were barricaded and the demands began. During the 5-hour siege, the misinformation agents in the sheriff's department told the media that the riot was only due to overcrowding and the breakdown of the air conditioning system. While the pigs videotaped those in the chow hall from an elevated plexiglass tower, acting sympathetic to the righteous complaints of the resistors, other pigs were busy evacuating the module adjacent to the chow hall, 4800. For 5 hours, the resistors demanded to be treated as men and to be given better food and some protection from the Nazi police. For 5 hours, they heard, "Okay, gentlemen, you're right, and of course, we are all men." Then the resistors were made to leave the chow hall naked, walk through a gauntlet of pigs in full riot repression gear for their well-deserved whack with the P24 baton, and directed into 4800. The 17 stayed naked, with no bedclothes, no visits, no showers for 3 days. After that, they were given bedclothes, visits, and gray jumpsuits. The other 11,000 prisoners wore blue jumpsuits, but the Crips had to wear gray. Every time they went to court, on a visit, under heavy escort, to the doctor, or anywhere, they were subjected to the abuse of sadistic pigs who were looking for revenge. The Bloods, camouflaged in blue like the general population, also took liberty and attacked gray suits when they were caught alone or in isolated pairs. Directly across the hall from 4800, the pigs set up the OSS interdepartmental office. Ironically, or perhaps not at all, this was around the same time that the FBI released a study on Crips that stated 1 out of every 4 Crips is in jail for murder or has done time for murder. And 3 of the 4 Crips have been arrested for weapons-related charges. The counterintelligence of the Crips was kicked into full swing, and 4800 became the Crip module. It's quite clear to me now what was taking place at that time. But then, in 1984, I was deaf, dumb, and blind. We helped the pigs gather intelligence on us and had no idea we were doing so. Instead of 4800 being a module to contain us and keep the general population safe, it became an intelligence satellite for law enforcement, probably the true purpose for which it was originally designed. For us, it became the hood, a place to call ours, another testing ground. The most astonishing thing I remember about 4800 was that there wasn't any books in the entire module, and we weren't allowed to access to the library. The most astonishing thing I remember about 4800 was that there weren't any books in the entire module, and we weren't allowed access to the library. The decibel level was so high that when I didn't have a headache, I felt funny. Every set desperately tried to get their own set deep, because a deep set wielded power and could protect itself. Whenever, on our way to see a visitor or to the doctor, we'd see one of our homies in blue out in general population, general public. We'd tell the escort pig that the homie was a Crip, and the pig would get his name and booking number. That same night, the homie would be moved to 4800, doomed like the rest of us. GP was smoother, much better than 4800. You could walk around unattended to visits, other modules, practically anywhere. Many Crips shunned the module for this reason. Some didn't want to be labeled as Crip, and others couldn't stand the stress. There were also those with dirt on them who had to dodge their homies for fear of a beating or a stabbing. But when we'd see a homie in GP, we felt like, yo man, bring your ass home to Cripville. The process of getting into 4800 was overwhelming, so cats tended to circumvent it for this reason as well. You were made to stand and hold a play card with your name, your set name, and your hood on it for a series of pictures. The pictures were no doubt distributed among the pig population for intelligence. A lot of cats just didn't want to deal with that. Inside the module were Crips ranging in age from 18 to 40. The deepest sets were the Hoovers in the East Coast, a deadly mixture of power. In the beginning, all the sets tried to get along, each individual making an effort to suppress his disdain for enemies that he was now face to face with, sometimes in the same cell. In January 1985, this thin line of love and hate evaporated in the face of unfolding developments in the streets. The first major eruption of violence occurred on a slow day, a day that looked and felt like any other day. I was in Denver 8, and my cellmates were Old Man from 9 Deuce Hoover, Kenny Mitchell from the 60s, he was arrested in the 1970s for robbing Commodores, and Joe D from Atlantic Drive Compton Crips. We had just finished making a batch of Pruno, jail-made wine, and we were preparing to get drunk when we heard a voice. "Cuz, who's that down there from East Coast?" "Marstein," the voice replied. I had seen Marstein at the street races on Florence and Maine before the shootout with Little Fee and his crew. "Hey Marstein, what up, ninja?" "This little sad, cuz. I'm gonna come down there later and rap with you, homie." "Alright, cuz." Lil Sad was on Denver Road and Marstein was on Baker Road below us. I was going to send my regards but decided to wait until later as I was enjoying my drink. Everyone had heard about LaJoy, Lil Hoove, being killed days before, supposedly by East Coast as he drove through his hood. So when Marstein came in, along with Vamp for murder, it was believed that he must be in for killing LaJoy. Marstein now had 2 murders as he was already in for killing his swan. There were at least 18 Hoovers in 4800 at that time, and equally as many East Coast. There were 4 tiers in the module, each housing 16 cells. Those on Abel and Baker were 6-man cells. Those on Charlie and Denver Road were 4-man cells. We were not allowed in the chow hall anymore as a result of the rebellion, so we ate in the dayroom. Each tier had its own dayroom, and the inhabitants ate there respectively. Of course, every cell was full. When Abel Road was let out to chow, the East Coast fell into a tight circle around Marstein and Vamp, creating a group 8 deep. The largest contingency of Hoovers in the module was also housed on Abel Road, so no sooner did everyone get into the day room than the violence erupted. "Hoove up!" someone shrieked, sounding like a dead man's charge. Crudely constructed knives were drawn and the Hoovers proceeded to stab and beat the East Coast. The Coast resisted, but were no match for the fanatical Hoovers' aggression. From my cell, I could see the battle. Some Hoovers had 2 knives in hand and were making daring dives into the crowd of retreating East Coast, who looked more terrified than hurt. Other Hoovers had whole bars of county soap in socks and were swinging them into heads and bodies of the reachable East Coast. One East Coast snake from 7-6 was armed with the ice pick, but in his attempt to strike at the charging Hoovers, he slipped and stabbed his homie Vamp. The battle was quick and decisive. When the pigs rolled down, the Hoovers stood on one side of the day room, victorious, proud, and, as usual, arrogant, some still holding weapons. The East Coast were crumpled into the opposite corner, wrecked, beaten, and shamed. 6 were stabbed and all sustained bruises. The other Crips in the day room stepped back to let the inevitable take place. OSS's response was a devastating blow to the Crip module and gave some of us a glimpse at the type of control they really exercised. Marstein and Vamp were sent to the more constricting high-power I-750 module. The Hoovers went to the hole. But the real twist was that all the West Side Crips were moved to Abel and Charlie Road, and all the East Side Crips were put on Baker and Denver Road. Although the conflict did involve the West Side Hoovers and the East Side East Coast, it was not an issue of East versus West, but rather that these two sets, mere chapters of their respective sides, were at war. Their conflict entailed nothing else. But when OSS split up the Crips, it gave the Hoovers and the East Coast the opportunity to agitate each side into a war between East versus West. And that's exactly what happened. At night, the chanting began, with everyone from both sides participating. East side, Baker and Denver Road would chant, repeating it 3 times and finishing with a set roll call. East Coast, Avalon, Main Streets, Grape Street, 8-7, PJ Watts, 4 Tray, 5 Tray. And in response, the West Side would chant, West Side, Hoover, 8 Tray, 60s, Shotgun, Raymond, Playboy, West Boulevard. The threat of the East Side became real. So real, in fact, that the East and West Side sets that had never clashed began to do so under these conditions. All the while, OSS was conducting interviews, actually interrogations, to find out who was trying to bring about the long-lost unity of old. In these times, many disappeared from the Crip mod. One afternoon, we were all told to gather up our personal property and go into the huge communal showers. No one had any idea what was taking place. We all crowded into the showers with our meager property. We waited for hours to find out our fate. Looking around at one another, at friends we had met while in this shark tank, at enemies we had forgiven in the light of a new enemy, the East Side, we felt like a family being torn asunder. Eventually, a pig came in with our JRC cards and began to call off names. Scott, the pig shouted in the shower. Yeah, I replied, wondering why I was being called first. What you call me for, man? Shut up, you're going to Charlie 10. Get your shit and move now, shouted the little pink-faced pig who weighed no more than 150 pounds. I would have slapped the shit out of any other American for talking to me like that, but this scrawny little pig had the armed forces on his side. I gathered up my property and moved down the tier to C10. This didn't make much sense to me because I was in C8 before they rolled us up into the shower. It felt strange to walk past cell after empty cell, stripped bare to the concrete and steel. I felt like the only Crip on earth. I got to the cell, it was electronically open and I stepped in. Davis, I heard the little pig say. Yeah, here. That was Fat Rat from 5 Deuce Hoover. Charlie 10. Shit. That was my cell. Now I was tripping on what these pigs had in mind. Fat Rat came down the tier, laboring heavily under his crushing weight. Fat Rat was huge, with muscular arms and chest and a fat belly that, coupled with his dark complexion, made him resemble the pot-bellied stove. He and I were friends from juvenile hall. Cuz, what they doing? I mean, why they moving us all around? I asked Fat Rat as he plopped down on the bunk across from mine. Shit, cuz, I think they finna mix us up. I pity these cheese toasts, disrespectful for East Coast, that come in my cell. You think that's what they up to, huh? Yeah, cause I heard one other cop tell another. Another name was called Anderson. Right here, Charlie 10. Fat Rat and I looked at each other, and Fat Rat smiled. Anderson was BT from East Coast. I got one, Fat Rat said as he began to make his bed. I didn't know BT, but since he had come to the module, I had seen him around. He stood in front of my cell and waited to be let in. BT was 6'1", muscular and dark, almost like a big fit fat rat. He had been in the day room when the Hoovers vamped on the coast, but he hit the wall when they jumped, claiming he was under paperwork, Crip Constitution, and couldn't participate in Crip on Crip violence. He was one of the 2 who didn't get stabbed. What up, cuz? BT said to me as he hoisted his bedding up on the bunk above mine. Ain't nothing, just tripping off these canines. Yeah, these devils is on one, he said, then turned to Fat Rat. What up, cuz? Hoove up, shot Fat Rat in his... Hoove up, shot Fat Rat in a hardcore confrontational voice. And I'ma tell you right now, ninja, I ain't liking you or your homeboys. Yeah, well, I ain't in no set trips, and I ain't into no tribalism. I'm hooked up, and therefore forbidden to involve myself in that. In other words, I got no beef with you. Just like I ain't got no beef with Monster Cody. Monster Cody, not Master, I said annoyed. Yeah, that's right, I'm tripping. Yo, show, as if you think I'm going for that old bullshit you talking about, ninja. Fuck that, this is Hoover. Fat Rat said stubbornly. I ain't even tripping on that, and BT went on making his bed. I knew that a confrontation between these 2 was inevitable. I had heard about the Crip Constitution, but that was the extent of my knowledge. The Constitution was the latest topic on the wire. It was said that members of the organization were coming down to 4800 from San Quentin and Folsom to get things together in the Crip Nation. By this time, I was moving toward that mindset of unity. I had been living hard and could not expect to continue to do so and live or miss a life term in prison. The rumors surrounding the coming of the Constitutionalists had the ring of truth to them. When people spoke of them or those under paperwork, they invariably did so with great respect. They seemed to us like descending angels coming down to redeem the lost souls of Cripdom. Some felt nervous. I could see it in their eyes when they were spoken of. Perhaps they had done wrong or feared the responsibility of having to handle some business. Some seemed relieved and eager for the Constitutionalists' arrival. Those who were under everyday attack by vultures preying on setless individuals in shallow sets. What the pigs had done was mix everyone up. As much as they could, they put one member from each set in each cell. They were now trying to force us back together after they had intentionally torn us apart, creating conditions for massive distrust and confusion. Big Hog from 107 Hoover was a tier tender and went up and down the tiers trying to get those assigned to cells with oppositional members to refrain from any tribalistic violence. Most complied, but Fat Rat could not be deterred. He wanted to find out more about BT's affiliation. He wanted to see who he really was connected to. The remaining East Coast in the module had severed ties with BT because of his failure to act in their defense when they were attacked by the Hoovers. I had learned that day that the Coast had put a blue light, a hit on BT for his inactivity. Fat Rat knew that the Coast car would not defend BT, so he had little to worry about on that front. When Big Hog came down the tier, sweeping up, Fat Rat called to him and began whispering something into his ear. No doubt about BT's authenticity. Big Hog had been to the pen already and had been under the old Constitution, so he'd know if BT was really hooked up or not. Fat Rat repeatedly insisted he was faking. After Fat Rat had spoken to Hog with BT looking on in suspicion, Hog called BT over to the front gate. They began whispering. Fat Rat beamed as if to say, "Now the test of fire." The conversation with BT hadn't lasted but 2 minutes when Big Hog spoke up. "This ninja ain't hooked up in shit. Fat Rat served this ninja." BT backed up to the gate, facing us in the cell. His face said it all. Coward. Fat Rat read it and moved in. "Hey, hold on, Fat Rat, cuz I ain't got no beef with you, man." He knew he was doomed and was begging. Fat Rat had a reputation for being a booty bandit and thrived on weak men with tight asses. Poor BT. Fuck that. Why you lie, huh? Pow! Fat Rat smacked BT hard across the side of the head. "Oh, cuz, I just ain't in the Crip on Crip, cuz." Smack! Another whack came down, this one across his face. The tears grew quiet. "Hey, Hog," BT began, turning to Hog for relief. "Tell Fat Rat to stall me out, cuz. I'm gonna stall you out, alright?" With that, Fat Rat grabbed BT's boxer shorts by the elastic band and yanked them with one powerful tug. They tore right off of him. Surely I thought BT was going to mount an attack. He had to. "Bitches don't wear boxer shorts. Punk, men do." Fat Rat shouted, throwing the ripped shorts on the floor near the steel toilet. "Aw, Rat, you tripping, cuz," BT said, but made no move that telegraphed strength. "It's Mr. Fat Rat to you, bitch. Now what you want to do, huh? You want to get him up or what?" Fat Rat eased into a strike first position. "I ain't got no beef with you, fuck, Mr. Fat Rat." And that was it, his last vestiges of strength. He had yielded his manhood by calling Fat Rat Mr., a cardinal sin. In that instant, Fat Rat connected fist to face, knocking BT hard against the bars, where Hog took the liberty of grabbing his cheeks. BT's knees buckled until Hog had fondled his cheeks. He was going down. BT gave a start when Hog's hands touched his ass. "Cuz, what you doing?" "Shut up, punk. You know you like that," said Hog. Catcalls began coming from adjacent cells. BT looked around like a frightened, trapped lamb. But in contrast to a meek, feeble-bodied person, he stood there 6'1" and buff. Yet he had no inclination to defend himself from what was definitely a head-up situation. I was not going to get involved. I had no beef with East Coast or BT. Could I have prevented it? Yes, and I intended to. But it would be interesting to see how far this would go. I can't now qualify my thinking at the time. In my mind, it was kill or be killed, live or let die, law of the land. Fat Rat had backed to the rear of the cell and began to disrobe. I thought then that BT would strike, but he didn't. He still seemed to think that Fat Rat could be deterred by reasoning, by appealing to his intellectual morality. BT had been to the pen and had gotten tamed. He learned manipulation and vocabulary skills, but shit, Fat Rat, like me, was uncut street, straight out of the bush. The only language Fat Rat knew or respected or could be persuaded was by violence. Everything else was for the weak. Action and more action. Anything else paled in comparison. Fat Rat stood wide-legged in tattered shorts, belly hanging over him. He looked like an enraged Buddha. He was ready to fight or fuck, and knowing Fat Rat, he planned on a bit of both. Oh, Hog, you just gonna let your homie trip on me like this, huh? You letting him trip on you, ninja? I ain't in that cell. My name is Hog, not Fat Rat. Hey, Fat Rat, cuz, I don't want to fight with you, man. BT's pleading was reduced to a whimper, clashing hard with his appearance. He was evenly dark from head to toe, and standing there naked, he looked like a Zulu warrior. Ninja, you gonna do something? Fat Rat said, massaging his groin and stepping up on BT. Cuz, you tripping, Fat Rat. Pow! Fat Rat punched him hard in the solar plexus. Mr. Fat Rat, punk! Fat Rat exploded as BT doubled over in agony. Oh, alright, he said, barely getting the words out. Now what you gonna do? You ready to get him up or what? Fat Rat forced his way behind BT and made him move to the back of the cell. I don't want to do this, Fat Rat, BT said, straightening up to his full height, towering over Fat Rat by at least 3 inches. Even Fat Rat had to take a small step back. BT put his guard up and positioned his feet in a fighting stance. Then swiftly, like greased lightning, Fat Rat rushed into BT and began pounding him everywhere at once with furious blows. Fat Rat's hands were hammering blurs, reducing the formerly upright BT to a pitiful clump of flesh under the steel sink. BT hadn't thrown a blow, hadn't said a word, hadn't resisted with one fiber of his being, but Fat Rat didn't seem to recognize this. He continued to hammer away at BT's defenseless body as if he had put up a ferocious struggle. I believe he continued out of sheer fear of BT, from when he had finally stood up to do battle. Fat Rat clearly wanted to make sure that BT never resisted again. When Fat Rat ceased hitting him, BT lay unconscious on the cold concrete floor. The entire side of Abel and Charlie Row was deathly quiet. Everyone was listening. Winded and crazed beyond any reasoning short of death, Fat Rat began tearing his sheet into shreds. I knew what this meant. Once he had torn enough, he dragged BT out into the middle of the cell. He then rolled him over onto his stomach and proceeded to tie his hands behind his back, then his legs. Then he tied his bound limbs together. Only after he had been secured, bound, did BT start to squirm against the tension of the sheets, which held him into a hog-tied position. Fat Rat, in all his brutish arrogance, put one foot on BT's back like a big game hunter who had bagged a tiger and shouted from the depths of his lungs, "Hoof up!" And it seemed to echo forever, bouncing off wall after wall. "Hey monster," Snake from 7-6 said to me from down the lower tier. What's going on?" "Head up," I replied, which also implied that there was nothing I could do. Big Hog had to lock it up, but before he left, he told Fat Rat to save some for him. Fat Rat, enjoying his audience, wanted to make an impression as being a total brute. He looked over as if noticing me in the cell. "Monster, what's up, cuz? What should I do with this punk?" "I don't know, Rat. Cuz is a coward-ass motherfucker, huh?" "Hell yeah," Fat Rat replied and looked down at BT with disgust. "Let me up, cuz," BT said, trying to sound irritated. "A bit late for that shit." Fat Rat responded by pissing on BT's back and head as he lay on the floor. I couldn't believe it. "Aw, cuz," BT cried, "you wrong for..." BAM! Fat Rat kicked BT hard in the side. "Oof, Mr. Fat Rat. And don't even say cuz no more. You ain't no Crip." "Fat Rat," I said. "We're gonna clean this shit up, man." "Him," Fat Rat said, indicating BT. I knew Fat Rat wasn't going to untie him and expect him to clean it up. Surely BT would make an attempt on Fat Rat's life now. Wouldn't anyone so treated? You gonna untie cuz? Man, Fat Rat, you on one now, I said. Monster, this ninja broke. He ain't wanting to see me. Shit. I should change my name to King Fat Rat. I rolled my eyes to the ceiling at Fat Rat's insanity. He then bent down and began to untie BT. I slid back on my bed so as to not be in the way of what I was sure was going to be some stomp-on action. Once BT was loose, he stood up and went peacefully over to the sink. No you don't, Fat Rat said in a fatherly voice. Before you clean yourself, you finna clean these walls, the toilet, and... Hey, Fat Rat hollered over in the silent tears. Anybody need them drawers washed? Hell yeah, several voices replied from down the tier. Send your line down there, he shouted. What you looking at, punk? He said to BT, who flinched each time Fat Rat spoke. He was totally conquered. BT washed the graffiti-packed walls, washed several pair of underclothes, braided Fat Rat's hair, massaged Fat Rat's back, and finally, Fat Rat made him eat a bar of county soap and drink some perm repair shampoo. Rat was ruthless. After BT had done all this without so much as a flicker of resistance, Fat Rat body slammed him, tied him up again, and slid him up under the bunk on his stomach. Fat Rat had done all this without an inkling of shame or remorse. BT was his de facto servant slave. He followed through on every demand like a robot. The life had left his eyes, and his swollen face showed no feeling. All of his movements seemed to be under the supreme command of Fat Rat's verbal remote control. It was at times as amusing as it was scary and pitiful. How could BT let this happen? How had he grown up in South Central and escaped being tested for weakness? His will to resist was sapped like soda from a glass slurped through a straw. Fat Rat pranced around the cell like a proud little Buddha who had just converted another disciple. He kept trying to explain to me the process of the breaking stages he was putting BT through. He had actually developed a little science to it. You see, monster, he said like a college professor, the first thing I did was strip him of his clothing. Did? This make him feel less than strong. Then I degraded him by pissing on him, you see? And then I wouldn't let him wash it off, you know? So he was feeling fucked up inside. And with a punch now and again, shit, fool, ready for anything. Where you learn that from, Rat? Slavery. Slavery? Ninja, you ain't never been no slave, fool? Nah, but I read that in a book before. About how the slaves wasn't allowed to have clothes or wash theyself, so they lost theyself. Esteem, yeah, that's it. So I took his self-esteem, see? Yeah, I see that. And when I looked at BT, his expression was one of utter helplessness. I felt a little sorry for him, but I was a hardline conservative and felt that this was the life he'd chosen. Unlike the slaves, he had joined the Crips. He knew the job was dangerous when he took it. Module 4800 was the testing ground.